Chapter 7. The Original Sin. Rewriting the Lies About Slavery.
The story most African Americans were told about slavery is emotionally charged, but historically manipulated. From classrooms to television scripts, the version retold over and over goes something like this. White people woke up one day, sailed to Africa, snatched peaceful villagers from their homes, and shipped them across the ocean to be enslaved forever. It is even more ridiculous today. Many believe in the fictional African city, in the Black Panther comics, and films called Wakanda. Wakanda is portrayed as a highly advanced, technologically superior nation. The evil whites enslaved us. We were all kings and queens until Whitey came along. That's the headline. That's the myth. And while slavery was brutal, dehumanizing, and evil, what's even more damaging today is the distortion of how it all began and what that lie has done to the black mind. The truth is uncomfortable, but the truth, not feelings, sets people free. African tribes were selling slaves before a single European ship hit the coast. Slavery didn't begin with white men. It was a global business long before they joined the market. Slavery was not invented in the cotton fields of Georgia or on the plantations of Mississippi. Slavery has existed on every continent, in every civilization, across thousands of years. If truth mattered as much as outrage, we'd teach that Africans and Arabs were the original slave traders. Africans were selling Africans. Black and brown people were selling black people. This was going on for thousands of years before they even knew there were white people. Let that sink in. Tribal black leaders raided neighboring villages, took captives, and sold them to merchants, many of whom were Arab. These weren't one-off incidents. This was a business model, fully operational for centuries before European involvement. The white Europeans did not invent slavery. They tapped into an already booming marketplace. If that's uncomfortable, good. Growth doesn't come from lies that make you feel good. It comes from truth that makes you uncomfortable enough to change.
A dirty business with many dirty hands. White people entered the African slave trade in 1440. They didn't storm beaches with guns blazing. They negotiated. And those negotiations were with African chiefs and Arab slave traders who were already in the business of human trafficking. The white man didn't steal people. He purchased people who had already been enslaved by their own. He wasn't a thief. The white man was a customer in a human market that predated him by thousands of years. The black race hasn't fallen behind because of skin color, intelligence, or potential. It has fallen behind, in large part, because too many have been conditioned to romanticize oppression and cling to grievance as identity. When victimhood becomes culture, accountability dies. Growth dies, and the drive to compete, build, and win dies with it. This uncomfortable truth is rarely acknowledged, and when it is, it's quickly buried or dismissed. But it matters. The lie that white people invented slavery and destroyed Africa isn't just historically false, it's mentally crippling. It traps African Americans in a cycle of victimhood, always blaming others, always waiting to be rescued. Blaming the West, especially white people, for all black suffering has become the easy out. It means never having to look inward. No need to confront the toxic parts of your own culture, or take responsibility for poor decisions. No need to talk about the African kings, Muslim traders, and warlords who sold their own people long before Europeans arrived. You just point and yell, it's the white man's fault.
But didn't white people benefit? Of course they did. The transatlantic slave trade exploded once it got going, and the West, especially the southern U.S., built massive wealth on the backs of slave labor. That is an undeniable fact. But here's another one. The Arab slave trade lasted longer, enslaved more people overall, and was far more brutal, especially to women and boys. Yet you never hear about reparations from Arab nations. You never hear angry protests about that legacy. Let's get something straight. Arabs were never oppressed by the white man the way black Americans were. But now, they've wormed their way into the struggle, thanks to media spin and the deceptive label people of color. It's a lie, a convenient alliance built on fraud. Arabs were slave traders long before whites showed up, and many still carry open contempt for black people. They don't respect the culture, they don't share the pain, and behind closed doors, they laugh at how easily they've been allowed into the circle. They've hijacked the narrative, playing oppressed when it suits them, all while looking down on the very people they claim to stand with. It's not solidarity, it's strategy. They'll gladly ride the wave of victimhood when it benefits them, while not sharing the burden.
Who actually owned slaves? Another widely ignored truth is that most white people in America did not own slaves. In fact, only about 7% of whites ever did. That means the vast majority of white Americans had no involvement in slavery whatsoever. To simplify, 93 out of 100 white people in America did not own slaves. Now here's where things get even more twisted. Did you know how many black people owned slaves in America? Over 16,000. That's right. In places like Louisiana and South Carolina, free black people owned other black people. They ran plantations. They bought and sold human beings. They participated fully in the same system we now claim was universally white and evil. History has no clean hands. Stop pretending it does. You cannot heal from a wound you've imagined.
White people fought white people to end slavery. The Civil War was not a small political disagreement. It was the deadliest war in American history, and at its core was the issue of slavery. Over 600,000 whites died to determine the future of a nation that was morally torn apart. Did every Union soldier march into battle for the cause of black freedom? No, but many did. Abolitionists weren't just black. The majority were white. The Underground Railroad wasn't run by magic. White men, white women, white pastors, and white politicians risked their lives to bring slavery to an end. If truth matters, then say it. Whites didn't invent slavery, they abolished it. It still thrives today in parts of Africa and the Middle East. That matters. If you're going to tell the full story, tell that part too. History has receipts, and they don't care about your feelings. Africans sold Africans. Arabs profited. It was the Western nations, the white man, who eventually said, enough. Understand this. Slavery was started by black and brown people, and it was white people who ended it. Slavery is not a white sin. It's a human sin, and pretending otherwise keeps people ignorant and bitter. Yet, the narrative today doesn't even leave room for that truth. All white people are painted with the same brush as slave owners, oppressors, colonizers, and enemies, and all black people are cast as eternal victims who have no power, no choices, and no responsibility. That's not just lazy, it's dangerous. This is what I call the original sin, not slavery itself, but the lie that came after. Blaming the very people who ended slavery for the slavery you helped create is a betrayal of truth, decency, and history. This is what started the moral decay for Black America, when victimhood replaced accountability. When the truth is out and you still cling to the lie, you're not just wrong, you're willfully dishonest. At that point, it's not ignorance, it's malice. White Christians were the ones who led the global movement to abolish slavery. Only a small percentage of white Americans ever owned slaves, and those slaves were purchased from non-white slave traders.
The damage today from the original sin. The legacy of slavery is real, but the addiction to the narrative has become a crutch. We're behind because of slavery. We can't succeed because of what they did to us. Sound familiar? That's the poison. The belief that your fate was sealed centuries ago, that no matter how much time has passed, you are forever broken, forever shackled by history. You're not enslaved, your mindset is. The facts are not in dispute. Slavery was real. It was horrifying. It dehumanized millions. But if you are still letting it define you in 2025, that's not on white people. That's on you. You're not a slave. You're not even the child of a slave. You're several generations removed. You've got rights, access, technology, and resources your ancestors couldn't dream of. And still, too many people are choosing failure, blaming history, and teaching their kids to do the same. Here's what you're not supposed to say out loud: you're not losing because of slavery. You're losing because you believe a lie that keeps you angry, keeps you dependent, and stops you from building anything real. It's easier to stay mad at ghosts than to confront the man in the mirror. And that lie was never meant to help you. It was meant to control you. It was designed to weaken you and create a failed culture. Here's a brutal fact no one wants to talk about: only 57% of Black Americans are descended from slaves in the U.S. That means 43% are out here screaming about chains that never touched their bloodline. No slave ships. No plantations. Just inherited outrage. Even worse, many of them are descended from African or Caribbean families who sold slaves or owned them. But playing the victim pays better than telling the truth, so they lie, loudly, proudly, and shamelessly. They want the struggle without the history, the pain without the price. It's not just dishonest, it's disgusting. The reason they are disgusting is they know the truth. This isn't ancient history or lost records from 1,000 years ago. Many of the loudest voices whining about slavery have family trees that never touched American soil until 30 years ago. Their families came here by choice, not chains. Yet they scream about reparations and oppression like they personally survived the Middle Passage. It's not about justice, it's about entitlement. They're not honoring their past, they're exploiting someone else's for a payout. No slave ships. No plantations. Just fake outrage for free stuff. Here's the tongue twister: 43% of Black people, whose ancestors were never slaves, blame white people whose families never owned slaves. To anyone with a grasp of history, that's absurd. Some of those Black ancestors were slave traders themselves. So now we've got descendants of slave traders blaming descendants of people who had nothing to do with slavery. Even more ridiculous is Black descendants of slave owners blaming the white people that ended slavery. That's not justice, that's delusion. And if you believe in karma, it's easy to see why this twisted, bitter mindset keeps dragging Black communities into self-destruction. Lies don't liberate you, they bury you.
The way forward. This chapter isn't written to dismiss the suffering of your ancestors. It's written to honor them, because if they could rise out of chains, survive beatings, escape plantations, and fight for freedom, you can't seriously say that today's obstacles are too much. They fought for the opportunity you now waste. They dreamed of a life that you now squander. And worst of all, you're teaching the next generation to do the same. That's not progress. That's betrayal. Wake up. Shake off the lie. Stop worshiping wounds and start building a future. Because the only thing worse than slavery is choosing to live like you're still in chains. Most people will read this and dismiss it without a second thought. Accountability is gone, replaced by a victim mindset that leaves them stuck, and their children even further behind. They've chosen emotion over truth, and that choice has consequences that ripple through generations. But you don't have to follow that path. You can absorb the facts and break free from the lie. The white man is not your enemy. He ended your slavery. Teach your children truth, not hate, and give them the freedom that bitterness could never offer.
Simple real-world solutions. Number 1. Rewrite the curriculum. Demand that schools include a complete, balanced history of slavery, not just the parts that make people emotional. Students should learn that slavery existed across all cultures, that Africans and Arabs were heavily involved in the slave trade, and that Western nations were the first to abolish it. Education rooted in full truth breaks the cycle of blame. Number TWO. Stop teaching guilt. Start teaching growth. We must stop teaching white guilt and Black victimhood. These false roles destroy motivation and unity. Instead, teach children of all races to take pride in their potential, not resentment over a past they didn't live through. Number 3. Publicly celebrate the abolitiones. Yes. Honor the white Christians and political leaders who risked everything to end slavery. Highlight the sacrifices they made to push abolition forward. This restores truth to the narrative and teaches gratitude over grievance. Number 4. Teach kids to think, not just feel. Raise a generation that values critical thinking over emotional reaction. When children learn to question narratives, analyze history, and seek truth without bias, they become immune to propaganda. That shift in mindset is more powerful than any plot.